Welcome to OPC Radio Connect, the podcast that connects you with the services and programs of the Office of the People's Counsel, the independent D.C. government agency that represents the interests of electric, natural gas, water, and local phone consumers, whose mission it is to advocate, educate, and protect district utility consumers. Now, here's your host, Sandra Matavu-Fry, Director of the Office of the People's Counsel for the District of Columbia.
Hello, and welcome to OPC Radio Connect. I am Sandra Matavu-Fry, People's Counsel for the District of Columbia. Our mission at the office is to advocate on behalf of the District of Columbia utility consumers to ensure that they have reliable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable utility service. In other words, OPC is your utility lawyer. Through a series of podcasts, we will educate and inform you about changes in technology, your rights, rules, regulations, and pending cases affecting electric, natural gas, telephone, and water utility service. Today, we are focusing on solar energy, which is used as a sustainable energy resource alternative to fossil fuels such as coal. Many people think solar is a new discovery or a fancy new invention. In fact, the science of changing sunlight into electric energy dates back to 1839 and discoveries by French scientist Alexandre Edmond Becquerel. American scientist Thomas Edison also experimented with solar power. The first modern solar cell was patented by Russell Ohl in 1941. So it can be said, there is nothing new under the sun. Bad pun notwithstanding, let me introduce our guest. Ms. Pamela Nelson is OPC's Energy Efficiency Outreach Specialist, who coordinates our matching of DC residents interested in installing solar at their homes or businesses with information and access to resources that will allow them to participate and take advantage of various programs in the district. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, Sandra.
Our second guest is Lenward Coleman, Vice President of Site Operations for Groundswell, one of several grantees that is contracting with the District of Columbia through the Department of Energy and the Environment to perform solar installations for DC residents. Welcome, Mr. Coleman.
It's a pleasure to be here, Sandra.
Well, thank both of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. Before we get started, I would be remiss if I didn't note that OPC has been actively involved in the promotion of sustainable energy technologies and distributed energy resources such as solar for many years. We commissioned the first Value of Solar study in the District of Columbia in 2016, and that was accompanied by a study that focused on solar opportunities for low and medium income residents. The purpose of these studies was to determine whether deployment of solar technology in the district was a viable option. Their conclusion was that it was. We also produced OPC's Guide to Going Solar, which provides an easy-to-read, step-by-step guide for anyone interested in achieving the benefits of solar. We did that because we knew that many people were interested but didn't understand. Today, we will discuss OPC's work with the innovative Solar for All program offered by the District of Columbia government through the Department of Energy and the Environment. Pam, let's start with you. Describe for our listeners some of the goals of the Solar for All program and why OPC is collaborating with DOEE.
Sandra, thank you. First, let me give you a broad overview of the Solar for All program. The District of Columbia's Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard Act of 2004 allows the district to generate energy from renewable energy sources to decrease its overall carbon footprint. In 2016, the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard Act was amended to include the Solar for All program to be administered by the District Department of Energy and the Environment, or we will use the acronym DOEE throughout this presentation. The purpose of the Solar for All program is to increase access for 100,000 low-income households, seniors, small businesses, and nonprofits to the benefits of solar power at no cost to these qualifying groups. Of course, to help to reduce their energy burdens or percentage of household income spent on energy bills. The Solar for All program has roughly 8 grantees, each serving the solar needs of the solar participants.
Thank you, Pam. Mr. Coleman, your company, Groundswell, is one of the grantees under the Solar for All program. Please briefly give us some background information about your company and share with us what Groundswell is doing in the District of Columbia.
It would be a pleasure. Groundswell was founded in 2009 by a group of field organizers who supported President Obama's Obama for America. This group pushed forward environmental concerns in the communities and across the country. They first focused on wind programs and retrofitting the projects that would help small businesses as well as communities. But then in 2015, they turned around and focused, or pivoted as one would say, to shared powered communities. And in November, they launched a program that would help our low, moderate income communities. And with it, it lined up with the city and its focus on helping our low, moderate families enjoy clean energy. As you know, 20% of the communities across the country, or the poorest components, need this energy. And how do they get it? Normally it costs more because 10% of their income goes to energy. And with that energy, they have to look at normally homes that are not built to prepare them for getting the advantages of what solar can provide, and their incomes don't support the growing cost of this new energy. Groundswell focuses on that component, and that is their mission as they address how to lift communities.
Mr. Coleman, are you operating in other states or jurisdictions?
Yes, we are. We're at this time, we're in 8 cities: Hawaii, New York, New York, as well as Chicago, the DMV area, the District of Columbia, Virginia, and Maryland, and Georgia. And we have a portfolio of more than 20 megawatts of energy that we provide.
That's great. You touched on, in your opening, you touched on some of the points that we will explore further during the next 25 minutes or so.
Okay.
But it seems to me that one of the major benefits of the Solar for All program is that it levels the playing field by eliminating major financial impediments that has kept many of our low and medium income consumers from taking advantage of the benefits of solar. Could you elaborate on that? You touched on it in terms of many of our community members not having income to support installing solar.
With the mayor's initiative, there is funding that has been provided to DOEE. That funding allows us to build solar arrays in communities that allows that energy to reach the poor or the low moderate families. How that is done? By them meeting the standards of the city, we are able to give them energy credits that go directly to their utility bills, which allows OPC and Groundswell to have a wonderful working relationship. In that, they can see a savings of about 50% of their utility cost each month. And that changes how families can support, provide food, pay other bills, and raise the quality of life within those families.
And I
Pam,
guess,
go ahead.
Lenwood, I guess the key here is that one of the roles of the solar grantee, of course, is the free installation of solar or no-cost solar. So having said some of the benefits that the solar recipients receive, that is because of the fact that there is a no cost, no upfront cost, actually free to the recipients to have solar installed on their roofs.
That is correct, Pamela. As you know, with the funding that we receive as a grantee, it allows us to go out and find host sites. And we focus in our model churches, hospitals, schools, vacant land. And we look at these host sites and ensure that they're mission aligned to help these communities. In doing so, based upon the amount of kilowatt energy that is produced, we are able to put that into a formula and find a number that allows us to help families.
Pamela, we were talking about faith-based groups and churches. Would you tell us a little about your work with these groups? What do you find, what are the issues that they face? How do you work with them?
Sandra, on behalf of the Office of the People's Council, as you said earlier, I outreach to faith-based groups, small businesses, and property owners. The main purpose is to educate them about solar and, of course, the benefits, inclusive of all of the variety, a wide variety of available DC energy rebates and no-cost solar installation programs that will help them with energy upgrades for their respective buildings. Of course, again, the key is reduce energy bills while encouraging them to utilize these options, as well as facilitating the whole process of getting them to have solar installed. Actually, it's my passion to help our district energy consumers to be educated about not only going solar, but energy efficiency measures they can employ in their respective places for reduced energy bills and savings for overall positive environmental impacts. Therefore, it is necessary that collaboration with Groundswell and many other District of Columbia government groups is an essential part of my outreach. But specifically, in terms of helping the churches, one of the, I guess in this case we're talking particularly about the faith-based groups. One of the ways that I find it's very, very important with the faith-based groups, as is typical for most buildings in the District of Columbia, they're occupying spaces that are older buildings, very inefficient, dwindling congregation, and in dire need of education on not only the Solar for All program, but again, some energy efficiency measures that could help them to have lower utility bills.
Go ahead.
I would love to stress that there are also many projects in our pipeline. However, I do want to focus on my work with Groundswell today, who is a designated Solar for All grantee working with faith-based groups.
So when you go to some of the faith-based groups and churches, synagogues, I would imagine, mosques, as you mentioned, they are older buildings. Do you find that there's work that needs to be done prior to the installation of the solar panels? That's to either one of you. And what do you do about that?
And that's definitively so. As a matter of fact, Lenwood and we are having ongoing conversations as to how best to handle some of the issues. And some of those issues are leaky roofs or roofs that need to be completely replaced, if not repaired. And then old HVAC systems that have been in place as long as the building has been in place. And as you know, inefficient HVAC systems could become what I like to say an energy guzzler. And of course, it increases the utility bills for the churches. Lenwood, any responses?
You're so on point, Pamela. The first assessment we do when we're out together or individually is to look at that facility. As Pamela stated, congregations, especially faith-based, congregations are dwindling, which means the expenses are on the few, and many times the roofs in churches are in bad need of repair. What we try to do is partner with teams, DCSEU, which is basically the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, or DOEE, or other components that see the need and are willing to step up to the plate to make those adjustments that are required so that we can put the solar arrays in place to provide this energy.
So the bottom line is that it takes collaboration and working with other agencies and entities that can put together the whole package. And Pam, I know personally that you are really very good at doing that, pulling together various parties that can help a particular group.
Yes, and Sandra, that's well said. It's so imperative because there are so many programs available in DC. Unfortunately, they're all not in one single space. So it's very, very important that that collaboration has a handle on all of the programs to be able to give our residents, our customers, the most and best and efficient use of those programs.
Specifically, what groups are targeted to participate in the Solar for All program?
The groups targeted are 100,000 low-income households, seniors, small businesses, and nonprofits. Faith-based groups fall under the nonprofit arena.
Mr. Coleman, would you, and I know that you have been very successful just in terms of your outreach and your work in other jurisdictions, but tell us a little bit about your success stories in the District of Columbia.
Well, a couple come to mind, and as you would well understand, it takes a team effort, and each time you walk in a door, there's always different solutions that are required to get that project across the table. One that comes to mind is St. Luke's Baptist Church. Reverend Lewis, who I've come to know and enjoy, posed so many, I would say, concerns for his church and we found ways to do it. The HVAC system was going out. Beautiful church. Congregation small. These kinds of things impact the community. We were able to talk to DCSEU, have them come in and do an assessment, and we were able to turn around and put a new system in. Mm-hmm. That energy that was provided from doing the solar array, we were able to give it to the community and help low, moderate income families. So there was two added values that were brought to this. A rent payment that was given for using that roof. Mm-hmm. Then there was the community outreach and church that met the low, moderate income capacity for us to give that energy credit, and then improving the facility itself by putting in the HVAC system. These things are never forgotten. And many times our faith-based organizations are always looking at opportunities that don't seem to pan out the way they looked in the initial offering, but we're able to show them that there is no hook to this. It is real. Not a dollar was spent by the church. The community realized it's a real program, and there will be other services that will be provided over that 15 to 20 year period.
I understand there is a social service component where the churches or the recipients do social work for the community. Is that correct?
That is very true. As these systems come online, as we say go live, the churches will come together and they will have funding that will allow them to put health initiatives, training programs into place. And as they vote, as the needs present themselves, they can identify how certain money is spent throughout those years.
That's fabulous.
And also to that extent, Linwood, there are some churches that do have existing social service outreach programs. For example, it may be a clothing drive, a food drive. And in situations like that, Groundswell has an in-place sort of model to then now help the churches to do even better at what they're doing.
How long does it take to go from the application to the actual installation?
Now, that's a great question. And I'll have to smile because as we have gone through that process, I would say that normally it could take from the initial stages of coming in and seeing a whole site, it could take maybe 90 days. But let's also understand that coordination is required. DCRA, PEPCO, the funding coming in. Things can make that stretch out. PEPCO has a vast responsibility to the Washington, D.C. area. And as they come and hit our sites, sometimes it could take a little longer. And there's sometimes changes that need to be done because of the infrastructure. And we've kind of gone through that as we looked at the DuPont Park Senior Housing Facility. It was a task. You're dealing with HUD, which is Housing, Urban, and Renewal components that are involved. And with it, you don't want to take away the seniors' incentives that they get. So you now have to think out of the box. We had to coordinate with DOEE. They liked the creative steps that we took to use the energy credits instead of putting the energy into the facility to share it with other facilities. Well, we had to also work with HUD. HUD had to come to the table and say, we will not penalize our senior residents. And for that, we did a return. Those that got the credits for their energy had to turn back and give services back to the senior facility for getting it. Everything from computer training to trips. These are how we build communities and strengthen the networks from within.
So it is definitely a holistic approach, you would say.
Absolutely.
So how do consumers get started? Who should they call? What should they do?
Sandra, consumers should actually call, for my collaboration with Groundswell, actually call me, Pamela Nelson, at the Office of the People's Council so that I can set up that informational first step meeting. Once that meeting has been set up, then of course the process is meeting with the individuals of the church. And I want to add a little bit to your question previously. How long does the process last, actually? The initial process with, for example, faith-based groups could be lengthy. There is that informational first meeting. And then, of course, depending on the structure of the church, it's either the pastor may have the authority to sign and approve, the pastor may not. There is the various deacon boards, the deacon board, the trustee board, and in some cases you have to meet with all of those boards. So that initial process could take anywhere from the first informational meeting to actually close to 3 months before you get, and I guess it's also building a relationship before you actually get an entree into Groundswell being able to now present the Solar for All program and get the approval from the church to move forward.
So the time frame is largely situational or specific to each.
Yes.
There are times when it goes so smoothly, you're kicking yourself to make sure it's real.
Yes.
And then there are those where you're talking about 4 months. And as we get into this, there's 2 components Groundswell brings to the table. First, we go out and we build that relationship of trust with the host site and the community. Many times that takes our councilmen or councilwomen. It takes the church leadership. It takes the community itself to say, look, this works. It's real. The marketing done by DOEE through this initiative breaks down the barriers to make the program more successful. Groundswell deals with the host in building it, but we also deal with the subscriber component. And it's extremely important that the community realize it's twofold. We have our market rate, and then we have our moderate low-income families that must sign up to make this program a successful one. I recommend to everyone, go to our site, groundswell.org. You will see that we live and reflect what we preach. Second, our telephone number, our general number is 202-505-3051. I'll say it again, 202-505-3051. We want to help. And if you see our vision, you can sign up as a subscriber, be a part of the success of Washington, D.C.
Oh, I'm glad that you said that. Let's talk a little bit about why D.C. is a prime location for solar. We know, for example, that the district has abundant sunshine and solar power and renewable energy laws that really support solar installation on homes and businesses, as well as the really ambitious goals that the district has set for renewables to be used, 100% renewables by 2032 and carbon-free by 2050. So, what else is in play that makes D.C. such a great place for solar?
I would say all that you said and more. Under the Groundswell formula, we ensure training of our minorities. We ensure that small business gets the opportunity to build their folios and become competitive in this ever-growing market. These are important. And then to educate, because many don't understand what clean energy is about and sustainability. So when you go into a neighborhood, in order to connect all, sometimes it's good to see your own working on those roofs. Returning citizens can benefit from this. The community can. A livable wage is created. $15 on average to $20 is a wonderful working wage when it takes maybe 6 to 8 weeks of training to certify you to do this work. So as you look at the ever-growing and the SRACs, which we know are energy credits, Washington, D.C. stands on top of the country with $400 or more per credit watt. What does this do? It allows investors and our small businesses to prosper, which they can pass on to the community and to employment to lift communities. So it's holistic again.
Okay, that's great. What's the average upfront cost to buy and install solar without subsidies in the District of Columbia?
Whoa. That's a good one.
Well, actually, it's come down considerably. I would say maybe about 10 years ago, you were looking roughly close to about $75,000. The latest quote is anywhere from about $15,000 to $20,000. So
Okay.
yes, it has come down considerably. And with programs such as the Solar for All, then of course, it makes it even more attractive for our low to moderate income residents that cannot afford to do that.
We've been talking about DC Solar for All program, and my guests have been Lenwood Coleman of Groundswell and Pamela Nelson, OPC's Energy Efficiency Outreach